afternoon and welcome to the 100th edition of Pipers Persuasion. I've got a special for you and it's taken several weeks to put together. We know that you'll find this very special and enjoyable. Also, would commend our website at piperspersuasion.com. You can watch it on YouTube, but that's a shortcut to watching it if you wish, but you'll get a much fuller experience if you watch it on piperspersuasion.com, because alongside our main interview, edited interview, we'll have other short interviews of the various interviewees that contributed towards the main programme. So it's an extended version, if you like, of each person's sort of views on the subject. There'll also be music, very excellent music, and other notes and files that back up this episode. So as usual, I would just ask you to sit back and enjoy Pipers Persuasion.
The classroom music teacher at Plockton High School used the phrase, not to me but to one of our other tutors, used the phrase, pipers are not musicians.
I've seen loads of people who have got all the knowledge, but they don't have the flow or the flair and the performance of it.
The staff notation was written as A, so low G up to high A on the staff notation. But really, what should have happened was, if the pipes were to come in line with everybody, we should have moved up a semitone up to B flat.
Bear, I think, would say was becoming more complicated too. They wanted people with more knowledge, so that if they had anything to say, the knowledge would clarify the situation.
The heart of the thing, it's really difficult to teach someone expression. You can show them it, but you're not going to get that from the book. You'll get certain things from the book, but the rest you have to colour it in yourself.
It's his musicality that's coming through in the orchestra, because he's making them louder, he's making them softer, he's slowing them down, he's speeding them up.
Here's a thing that will surprise the two of yous, I hope it will anyway. When I arrived in Plockton in the year 2000, the classroom music teacher at Plockton High School used the phrase, not to me but to one of our other tutors, used the phrase, pipers are not musicians.
Well, right? That's where the programme's coming from, really, isn't it?
That was in the year 2000. That's not that long ago. At a high school in the West Highlands that had just started out a National Centre of Excellence in Musicianship. That attitude was already there. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things we kind of try to overcome, because if somebody tells you as a young piper that you're not a musician, you'll believe it.
Yeah.
So what we've been doing, Finlay particularly, and the RCS guys and all the rest of it, and stuff in Plockton, is just trying to turn that round a wee bit and give pipers the confidence to believe that they're musicians, and the knowledge that helps them have that confidence.
And the musical knowledge to interface with other musicians is essential, even how to speak the language, shorthand language, the terminology and all the rest. If they don't understand that, it's very, very difficult when you're landed in the middle of an orchestra. I'm quite sure both of you have been put in that position.
Yes.
Would you like to discuss that one?
Well, I think it's important to think about, we don't only teach pipers, and we don't teach pipers just piping. We also talk about the wider contextual side of playing music and understanding. And I play whistle and flute myself and write music, so we like to think of it as, it's a broader spectrum than just piping.
As soon as a young person starts, you're almost immediately trying to get them to write a bit of music, copy the dots and the dashes on the manuscript.
The wide range of scales, if you wish. Mm-hmm. How do you go about teaching that?
You would start off with the obvious, just the white notes, the C major scale, and then add the different keys. So you would go into G major with one sharp or F major with a flat, and just build them up from there. I would always try to impart a bit of theoretical musical knowledge to my amateur singers or players.
And you find that they take it on board, okay?
Oh yeah, they really enjoy that. They really enjoy it.
Good.
And it's an aspect of music that they maybe don't know an awful lot about. Well, they know nothing about.
It's interesting because you can compare maybe your church choir, it's very, very basic, and then you've got the AO choir where you're expecting them to have just a wee bit more knowledge.
A bit more knowledge, but I'd say both choirs are very similar. And they both have the same amount of knowledge, really.
Aye.
You've got some who can read a lot of music, and you've got others who can't read at all. If you go to a professional choir, if you went to, for example, the Scottish National Orchestra Chorus, which I've sung in, if you go to them, the expectation there is that they would be able to sight read a piece of music straight off.
Okay.
You know, as a violinist, would be able to play a tune straight off, just to be able to sight read it straight off. Then that would be the expectation.
When I got to 6th year, I had to take another higher because I only had 2 and 3 in the list, and said, "Look, to stay on you need to take another higher." And I looked at the options, and it was music or management information systems or something like that. So of course I thought, right, I'll go for the music thing. By that point I was playing loads, doing gigs, writing music and all that stuff. So I went to see the head of music, who said, no chance. You've got no chance of passing this because you don't have the knowledge. End of story, you can't do it. And just at that, there was a brilliant teacher, who was one of the music teachers, not the head, Mrs. Cornwell. She kind of was there or thereabouts, and she said, "I'll come and join my class. I'll take you on.
We'll give you the knowledge."
You've got the knowledge, right? Yeah. You just don't know the names of things.
Aye,
absolutely.
The language.
The language, and it's like, so if you listen to a piece of music, and at that time there was listening skills, so you listen to something and you need to describe it. She'll say, "Describe what's happening there," and I would describe it. And she said, "Well, that's what they call it in classical music."
Music courses are very well graded and laid out. There are 8 levels, so 8 grades, and the grades of theory, grades 1 to 5, you need to have passed grade 5 theory before you can actually go on to grade 6 practical. So there are practical grades and there are theory grades, and you would go and sit the examination.
What sort of percentage of your musical sort of population, your pupils, are competent in this sort of stuff?
Most of them would be, if they're going on at all. They have
I think that's a pertinent question.
Yeah, absolutely. They have to be.
Aye.
Because in order to go on with the grade exam, so you get to grade 5, you can't sit grade 6 unless you have passed your grade 5 theory exam.
Aye.
So it's a bit like your driving test.
Aye.
You can't sit your practical driving test until you've passed your theory.
And of course, if you don't pass these exams, if you wish, it prevents you from taking part in orchestras.
Well, it doesn't wholly prevent you. It would probably hinder your progress. You can't go on to study music at college without having passed grade 5 theory.
Right.
You need to have a minimum of grade 5 theory.
How many grades do you go up to?
It goes up to 8. 8 grades.
And is there a
And then
professional
you
grade
go,
after that?
then you go into diploma level, and obviously degree level at the universities.
What sort of qualifications have you got yourself? Theory, Marie?
That's a really good question for someone that, like, I lecture at the Royal Conservatoire in performance and fiddle, and I don't have any qualifications at all. I taught myself when I was just about to leave primary school, sort of age 10, 11, played along to records. Yeah. Then at high school, I dabbled a little bit in classical music and got, you know, the usual O-grade music, higher music. But beyond that, it's just come from opportunities and becoming a professional musician. And my teaching, I've just developed my own approach, which is really holistic. And, you know, I don't really base my teaching on the fiddle. I base it on music and the type of person that I'm teaching. So although I teach those, you know, fiddle and performance, I don't have a degree, a diploma, a master's. I don't have any of that. A few years back, I had a classical violinist student from RCS, and she did a module of fiddle, and they have an assessment to do at the end. And, you know, obviously she could sight read the piece straight away, like no mistakes. But there was nothing in her of the music. She just did what the music was telling her, you know. A lot of trad music doesn't have, you know, loud, quiet, diminuendo, crescendo. There's none of that in it, really, unless you get a piece that's been specifically written by a trad musician for, you know, one of these commissions or whatever, and they tend to add things in. So you open a tune book, there's very little guidance in it. And as I asked this girl, I said, you know, how much could you give of yourself to that? And she said, well, nothing, because I just play what's written. So I said, well, percentage wise, what could you give? And she said, well, I don't know, maybe, you know, 15%. And I said, well, I'm looking for 100%. 100%. How are you going to do that? How are you going to make it yours? And she said she'd never been asked that. She'd never thought about that. And I said to her, well, why are you playing music? Do you know what I mean? Like, why, you know, I totally admired her ability to sight read. You know, I can open a trad book and sight read all the jigs and the reels and standard stuff. I can go to a gig and play a country dance and sight read the stuff. But it's not that difficult because it's in my comfort zone. If I was to take it to the next level of the orchestra, it would depend on the pieces. You know, everyone has their, do you know what I mean, their cap. But that was her experience of learning music. So this thing of, you know, passing down tunes, you know, I've learnt stuff from pipers and guitarists and songs and stuff. So you're hearing it on different instruments, whereas I think if you're solely doing classical violin, quite often it's just you and your teacher and the violin and you know, the music. And I don't mean that in a negative way. That's just the way they're taught. That's the way to do it. And maybe there's something in that they have that resilience that they can sit in the orchestra and just sight read the part. But I think if we all worked at it hard enough, if we wanted to, we could do it as well.
I think probably Peabrach came from a basis of folk music, where the groundwork, the urla, might be some sort of local piece of music, that then became developed into what we know as the variations. And the trouble with it is the groundwork isn't written in strict time. It gets a time signature, the notes are all fitted into it, but there are things in it that are notes that aren't included in the time signature. And really learning the groundwork of Pibroch becomes almost done by ear from whoever's teaching you. When you go and look at, if you open a book of modern Pibroch and try to imagine how it should be played, all you're doing is going on what you might have learned by ear when you were learning to play Pibroch.
It's always been difficult just to put exactly on paper what you're trying to produce, I suppose.
I think if you did that, a lot of people would end up confused. If you like an orchestral musician or playing an orchestral instrument, the awareness of the music is slightly different from what we have. You could say to someone, what's the time signature for a reel? They'll tell you it's cut common time. And what is cut common time? In numbers, it's 2-2. 2 minims in the bar. But actually, when you study the rhythm of a reel, it's actually more like 4-4, because you can't dance. You can't dance twice to the one bar. You would be floating in the air to do that. And in the old days, you probably remember as well, Alan, that Strathspey's, when you were playing them, it was it was only 2 beats you were doing in the bar. Now we know it's 4 beats in the bar. So there are a lot of traditional things, I think, in pipe music in particular, that because of the way it was developed, there was a lack of knowledge really about rhythm and time signatures. It was just a dance. Whoever wrote the music out wrote it like that, and you didn't really understand what it was, deeply what the rhythm was. Quavers, quavers, quavers in a round format. But actually, it never actually comes out like that when you listen to jigs. It's still, when it's at the right tempo, that underlying dot and cut rhythm comes through it for the energy of the dance. And one of the things that I used to do was, one of the time signatures that actually messed about people was one of Brubeck's pieces again. His drummer was keen on trying to be inventive and changing things. So if we were entertaining a group somewhere, we'd stop somewhere coming back from Cowl or something like that with the pipes out, and I'd be asked to play. Then one of the things we would do is jigs from the chieftains, because they're nice things to do. And while I was doing that, one of the drummers, Bob Edmiston, while the audience were sitting there clapping away and enjoying it, would come over and whisper in my ear and say, "Blue Rondo, Jim. That was a piece of music. Do you know of it?"
No.
It's a Brubeck piece. And it's in 9/8. But because of the accents, and this is part of the rhythm thing that we're talking about for drummers, where the accents will change its idea. So I'll just play a wee bit of a 9/8 and then put that in as well. I'm tapping away quite happy to that. the 9/8 only comes out in that da 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 da. And
Aye. Mm-hmm.
what was amusing about it was when I started playing that, the people who were sitting clapping actually looked at their hands if something had gone wrong with them. And Brubeck might have created a classic piece of jazz music, but for us it was a bit of fun.
A beginner to come in and say, "Can you sing me a song?" You ever tried that? Just
Oh
to see
yeah, I mean,
musical ear.
Totally, and you do get people that have the coordination because music uses both sides of the brain. So it's just the way your brain's wired. But also, I think if you're born into a family where, say, your mother plays the pipes and your father plays the piano or whatever, before you're even born, you're hearing that, and you're probably most likely inheriting some of their genes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like my kids very easily learn instruments. They don't play now, but and I wouldn't force it on them. But they're musical. Was it just by chance? My father was a singer, and so song was a big thing in the house. Lots of songs, and you subconsciously you learn them. You don't even know you're learning them. So I think there's talent, there's natural talent which you can't teach, but I think you can teach people that have the aptitude to learn and the determination
build on it. Yeah.
to learn. The heart of the thing, it's really difficult to teach someone expression. You can show them it, but you're not going to get that from the book. You'll get certain things from the book, but the rest you have to colour it in yourself. Do you know what I mean? You may have a soloist, and I think there is that element of giving that soloist their space to do the concerto or whatever. But when it comes to the orchestra, they need that unison sound. They need to be together. So for me, it's a completely different performance. And I don't think it necessarily means that the heart is lost. I think if the conductor's doing their job and the musicians are connecting with that, you will get that beautiful sound. It's completely different from a soloist. As you're saying, you can take that leeway. Like, I know I really dotted a lot of the things in the conundrum. It's just the way I felt like playing it today. If I did that in the orchestra, I would be getting the look because I'm still on that note and everyone's moved on, so it wouldn't work.
You are a member of a sort of half-decent orchestra. Mm-hmm. What sort of grades do you require?
An amateur orchestra or a professional orchestra?
Well, discuss both.
Discuss both. I would say you would need to have approximately grade 5, grade 6 playing skills, so practical skills, and grade 5 theory. I would say grade 5 theory minimum.
So I think for the listener, we really need to put a wee bit more flesh in the bone, the practical aspects of playing grade 5 on an instrument. What does that mean?
It's difficult for me to just come up with what it would actually mean.
Well, say in a piano, for instance.
Say in a piano. In a piano, you would need to be proficient on both hands. Uh-huh. You need to have a knowledge of the different keys, probably up to 4 sharps, 4 flats, the different keys. You would need to have a knowledge of time signatures and the difference between obviously compound and simple time. You would also need to have a knowledge of rhythm and syncopation. So you need to be able to identify crotchets, quavers, semiquavers, and obviously the higher up the grades you go, the more of that's involved, the more complicated the music will become.
I think probably where it got the biggest response would be people who, for example, may have wanted to become adjudicators.
Aye, exactly.
And they had to pass necessary exams to get there. And over the years, it was what they would call in the old days elementary, intermediate, and advanced. Once upon a time, the elementary exam was good enough to get you to judge, based obviously on your technical skills and your musical ability as well. But over the years, the standards were getting moved higher and higher because they wanted because the music itself, to be fair, I think would say, was becoming more complicated too. They wanted people with more knowledge, so that if they had anything to say, the knowledge would clarify the situation. And I've always said that it's important to remember that everybody's taste is different.
When I was young, when I started piano lessons, it was discouraged very much that you should never play without the music. Yeah, and that, to my mind, is not right. You know, there's a happy medium somewhere along the way. I find it very difficult to play without music. A lot of my colleagues find it easy. I have to work really hard at playing music without
Memorising
a tune without the dots in front of me.
Whereas
Put the music in,
Pipers have got to do this.
well, put the music in front of me and I can play it, no bother at all.
Aye.
Take the music away from me, and I'll make a bit of a fist of it as best I can, but it won't be perfect by any means.
And so, did you ever? You'd never then reach a position of hearing a tune and be able to just go and replicate that.
I
tune?
personally can't do that. I can sit down and I can work it out. If you give me 5 minutes, I'd be able to work
But
it out.
if you heard a tune on the radio or something like that, you couldn't just.
I can't do that.
For me personally, it took me a couple of years to be able to read music because I'm dyslexic.
Okay.
And I didn't know that about myself at the time, and my ear was so quick,
Yeah.
which I also didn't understand,
Yes.
being able to identify a note when I hear it and things, my pitch is very good. And so for me, my classical teacher would play something, a big piece, and I was very quickly memorising it, and he didn't know that, point to where you are in the music. I'm like, well, I don't really know. Is it there? He's, no, we're not there yet. We're way back here. So he very quickly thought, right, you're using your ear. What's that note? And I'm like, that's an A, that's a G, that's that. And he's like, right, okay. I think I've been able to identify, from a teacher's point of view anyway, the capabilities of the person's ear. And if they've got that ear, they're always going to have it. If they don't read music at all, I've taught someone from the beginning, and what I do is I introduce music very gradually, as in writing music. So they learn to write the treble clef, and then they'll learn maybe 5 notes, and then we do compositions just using those 5 notes. It's very basic, and I just build on it. It's like building a little brick wall. It doesn't need to be
pentatonic scale or what?
Well, it can just be 5 notes, like, so say, just regarding learning the fiddle, for instance, I might say, right, we're going to use the A string, and gradually I would introduce what fingers needed for each note and what it looks like on the paper.
Yeah.
Now, within those 4 notes, you can write a little tune. I've just made that up out my head.
Okay.
So it means that they can, because they're learning, that's an easy tune, they can play it, and they can understand, once they know where a D is on the line and the C's, and, so it's just a very gradual, and it depends on each individual how long it takes them to grasp that. That's how I would kickstart a beginner. But lots of ear things, lots of musical games, find this note on your fiddle, and they're thinking, well, it's low, right, where is it? lots of ear stuff to develop the ear, but you can quickly tell who's got a good ear, to be honest. It's not rocket science.
People talk about tone deafness, so I'm tone deaf. Tone deafness is a very rare phenomenon. Tone deafness is the inability to distinguish between that and that. It's the inability to distinguish pitch. It doesn't happen very much. There are some people that have tone deafness, but most people can distinguish pitch, and if you can distinguish pitch, you can sing. That's not going to make you a good singer, but the ability to sing, and pipers know this from Canterbury, the ability to use singing as a way of teaching music is not exclusive to piping and pipers. It happens all the time in the world of traditional music that people teach each other. How many pub sessions you've been in? Give us such and such's farewell to somewhere. Oh, how does it go? La-da-dee-da. Oh, right, I've got it now. It's the oral trigger.
To think about the distinction in terms of what we call, musicianship, or we talk about musicians. I also think there's a space, and it's really important that we recognise in traditional music, learning by ear. The oral tradition is so important as well.
But ask any jazz musician about that.
And I think that's something that I think piping has become quite academic in terms of, you look at it, everyone reads music, pretty much. You play the kind of set technique and the set repertoire. If you look at the folk world and the jazz world, often that's much, the knowledge might be there, but there's a kind of loose, or some of the best trad players I know don't read music.
Exactly.
That doesn't mean they're illiterate by any means musically. That means they're really amazing at learning things by ear and feel and that kind of thing.
Informally.
No, absolutely not, because ear training and those listening skills are taught formally in the world of jazz, and they're being taught formally in the world of traditional music now. We teach by ear a lot of the time. A lot of our tutors teach orally, and it's formal training. Here is the tune, ba-da-da-bum-bum. Now you play it back. No, that note's wrong. And you can have every single bit as much accuracy and precision in learning by ear, learning oral skills, as you can on the paper.
And that's very, very important.
It's hugely important.
I think it is changing. Like certainly in a lot of teaching that happens at the RCS and in here, and it's about recognising that and understanding it. I think the old school thing would have been, well, if you don't read music, you must be rubbish.
Yes, playing by ear was looked down.
That was a thing. Yeah, it was like your benchmark as a piper or any kind of musician was, can you sight read music?
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean you're a good musician.
Yeah. No, it's not going to make you better.
Likewise, if you can't read a note of music, it doesn't mean you're a bad musician.
No.
So it's that. To me, that's the most important thing. If you want to go and play with an orchestra, right, the best thing to do is understand what's happening, so you can talk and converse on the same level as everyone else, right? So that's where you need that knowledge, but you also still need to be a really good player. Yeah. There's no point in having the knowledge and the terminology if you can't put it into practice. So I think, and again, that the world of thinking about theory and musicality as different things,
yes,
I think has, it's shifted. It's not either or. You need both. It's right. Like you hear in piping terms, folk go, he's a good technical player, or he's a good musical player, or she's a great, or she's got a great feel about her playing, or.
Aye.
And actually,
package is not.
It has to be both of those things.
It's got to be the package.
And that's where it's the package of it. I think is the most important.
As we've discussed this stuff in Plockton over the years, what we've found is that the language that you use, the terminology that you just used there, is quite important. The T word, theory. Does not always go down well with young people. Oh, dull, boring, right?
Aye.
So we invented, Jack Evans, the guitar player and guitar tutor, is due the credit for this. We invented a second study. Most other music schools would have some kind of theory, or the piano as a compulsory second study. We don't do that, or didn't do that. But what we did do is we invented a second study option that is theory, to all intents and purposes, but we called it creative musicianship. And we made sure that when they were doing it, that they had an instrument in their hand and not just a pen and a bit of paper. So you actually learn the theoretical skills almost without realising they're doing it, and then learn, most importantly, the application thereof. All the theory in the world is of no use to you if you can't apply it in a practical situation.
If I go back to
aside.
Yeah, surely. I've conducted choirs and orchestras and bands. Some people would imagine that the conductor's not there for anything other than to wave his arms around and look good in front of the orchestra, but that's not quite true. If you watch a BBC proms or something like that, and watch the conductor very carefully, the producer will very often be, well, I would think the producer will always be able to read music and be able to read a score. So the producer will be sitting looking at the score of instruments. So it starts with the flutes, and the woodwind piccolo flutes at the top, goes all the way down to the double basses at the very bottom, with all the instruments scored, always in the same position, by the way. So you always know, if you're looking for the flutes or the piccolos, they're always up at the top. If you're looking for the strings, they're always in the group down at the bottom. So the producer will be looking at that. He'll be watching what's going to be happening soon. So the cameramen are on the strings because they're playing at the moment. The producer will be watching, and he will see that on bar 20 coming up quite soon, the timpani are going to be doing their thing. So he will direct his cameras, say, ready now, camera 4, timpani. And they go over to the timpani, and sure enough, the timpani do their thing. If you're watching the conductor, he's doing exactly the same thing, because the conductor will be conducting, and he'll be doing violin strings, there's the strings, and then timpani.
Yeah.
And that's what he's there for. He's there as a reference point to give the musicality to the orchestra. It's his musicality that's coming through in the orchestra, because he's making them louder, he's making them softer, he's slowing them down, he's speeding them up. He's going to borrow a little bit here and there. He's going to slow it up, speed it up, and pause it now and again too.
How does a conductor keep? He's got his music. How could you tell us about that?
The conductor of the score.
Aye.
Right? So the conductor has the score in front of him, which is obviously all of the instrumental parts on it. So you can see he knows exactly what all of the different instrumentalists are going to play, or what they should be playing. Sometimes they don't play what they're supposed to play, but he knows what they should be playing. And it's his job to interpret that score. It's his job to say, right, I know that Mozart would maybe have wanted to have done it this way, but we're going to freshen it up. We're going to do it a different way. We're going to put a different spin on it. We're going to make it a little bit faster, maybe than it might have been. Strictly, that's the whole idea. Correct. And put their interpretation on it, and some orchestras play with very original instruments, so they play with instruments, for example, Baroque trumpets, which are in a different key. They're in D, so they're very much brighter, a much brighter sound. And your traditional trumpets in B flat, so Baroque trumpets are in D, and it just gives a different feel to the music. So it's the conductor's job to do that, to bring something a wee bit different to it.
Would be somebody planking a book of music down in front of you in the stand, and in amongst about 16 other violinists and all the rest, and guitar players and drummers and pianists. So, and then the conductor just does that, and you've got to start playing, Have you ever been in that position?
Can I go to the toilet? I have, as I say, and even things like backing bands at Celtic Connections and stuff, where there's parts, and you turn up, here's the fiddle part, and it's like in B major, and because the singer sings in B major, and I'm like, oh my, that's 5 sharps. That's quite a lot of sharps for me to get my fingers around. What I would do is I would accept that situation and admit to myself that I'm going to get caught out. I'd do my best, and then I'd go away and do the work for the gig. I'd learn my parts and come back.
What's your favourite instrument to play with? Is it the fiddle or is it other?
I don't know if I've got a favourite. I mean, that's
a hell of a question.
It's more people. I think.
Yeah, who's your favourite people? Who's your favourite musicians to play with? We can answer that question.
You mentioned Marie Fielding earlier on. I love playing pipes with Marie.
She's fabulous.
She's playing fiddle. Because, she's a great musician. She's a great feel about her playing, great tone, all that stuff. But she kind of really gets the pipe thing. She loves playing pipe tunes, and she's by her own admissions a frustrated piper.
Yeah.
So I like playing with Marie for that real tightness of, like, if you want pipe and fiddle to be really just doing the same thing and all sound like one. I've done quite a lot of different things with orchestra, ranging from, what some people might think quite twee, kind of traditionally stuff.
Aye.
Your Highland Cathedrals and Amazing Graces and all that stuff.
We've all been there.
Up to things like the Autumn of Wedding with Maxwell Davis, the Sean Davies stuff. Big, new commissions, the Grit Orchestra, which is a whole different thing again. So it's fine. The conductor's, it's the band leader, the person who keeps the beat and keeps the shape of things.
I do remember that my very first experience of working with an orchestral conductor was extremely difficult because I hadn't done it before, and nobody explained to me the baton movements. And so I was watching this stick waving around in the air, and I didn't know where the beat was, and it was only there was somebody explained to me, one of the other players. I said, "Listen, I hope you don't mind me asking this. I've never done this before." And you've got to do that. You've got to be willing to be the daft laddie. You've got to I'm kind of struggling with time here. Watch the baton, and when it goes boop at the bottom of the beat, that's the beat. So there's a little flick of the wrist and a flick of the baton, and that's where.
Yeah, but we always
the
think
drummer
about
would
that.
hit the bass. Exactly.
Like pipers and folk
Beat
musicians would think that's your one, but it might it's a slightly different interpretation of
although
where the one is.
Not to do with what we're talking about, but an interesting thing that I might have mentioned to you when I did my individual interview. Angus MacLellan taught us to play strathspeys like that, up. So you're marching your reel, boom, 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 the strathspey comes up. So I wasn't, and in fact your dad was one of the first guys I ever saw who would stand on one leg and beat his foot lightly off the ground. And if you watch some people playing strathspeys, Big Angus used to do it as well, that actually the foot will come up off the ground, and that's what gets the lift of life for the dance.
To do with the Highland dancer,
correct.
Isn't it?
Absolutely.
And the Highland dancer should never touch the ground, sort of thing.
Keep them up in the air.
I think again, if
and that's
musicianship.
musicianship. That's what we're talking about. That's the nature of talking to other musicians about the beat. The beat is not one fixed thing. The beat, like anything else in music, is open to interpretation, and that dialogue is what helps you understand that.
Comes into piping all the time, so like playing in a higher pitch, we're more comfortable in doing that because that's the way you're set up your program from a kid. This is the pitch you're in, and then as you get older you realise, okay, maybe I have to come down in pitch, and it's as you set the bagpipe up accordingly. Everybody's different in how they blow, and you're just looking to things with electronic tuners nowadays. It's easier to monitor if you're going sharp or flat, and you just basically have to know what you're doing and keep an eye on it. To stay in tune with everybody else.
So it's maybe easier these days, and then you're employing the B-flat chanter also. So that's easier than the other musicians for their instruments. Do they have to retune their instruments yet?
Well, yeah, I mean things like clarsach, guitar, they're constantly tuning the fiddle and stuff as well. Just like they would normally be. It just means that they're not operating at a pitch where their instrument's possibly not comfortable in it. And I remember the Tannehill Weavers, like, and again, I apologise to John Martin, the fiddle player as well, playing a nail chanter, and sometimes in America when it's very hot and the altitude,
it's screaming.
He would have to tune his fiddle and it was nearly bending, you know. Because it would really be almost like up near the pitch. It'd be, I think, picking up the whistle as well, give you more an awareness of different keys.
So how did you get on with the groups when we were playing pipes and then the whistle? Did you play any other instrument?
No, not just small pipes and a wee bit of woolen pipes I've picked up.
But really, professionally, if you were in a group, you would either be playing the whistle or the pipes.
Yeah, that's right.
So, how did that go with the groups?
So, because you're playing with other instruments and all that, and you want to be a bit more versatile, and the whistle. So we think with the whistle, it's similar. There are similar fingering to the pipes, but the only way I can describe the whistle is the fingering is like upside down and back to front of what piping is.
Yes.
And that's where you have to get your head around. And then obviously with the different keys of it let you be a bit more versatile when you're like things like backing songs, etc. Rather than
so the whistle, some are made with B flat, some are made.
Yeah.
What other keys do you?
Every key, B flat, right up the scale.
And what's your sort of favourite one to use then?
Yeah, well, the main one you would play with the pipes is E flat, with a slightly lower whistle, but then an F.
That's good. But you concentrated on the practical aspects of tuning a piano.
Yes, yeah.
But in the mechanics of that, much musical knowledge would you have to do that?
Well, to get into the course, you need to demonstrate that you had an ear for tuning.
Aye.
So what if you got in past that? Basically, it was. When you get into the course was basically when you find out about all the theory behind it, basically.
Yes.
Which would go into tuning frequencies, not so much scale, more frequencies, and how the wavelengths and would behave within the parts of a piano and the build-up of a piano.
A lot of that's done with computers.
Yeah.
Now. But that wouldn't necessarily be the case when you were doing it at the college, is that correct?
Yeah, no, you're right, yeah. I seem to forget that you seem to think they've been here all along, but no, that's right, yeah.
Now, decent computers didn't really come into about 15 years ago, if you like. We've moved at a hell of a rate since, but that's the way it goes. So you would learn with tuning forks?
Yes, yeah.
How many tuning forks do you have? A case full or just one or two?
Just one or two now. in the loft somewhere.
But you need quite a few in order just to correct the whole instrument, I suppose. Did you ever get into the back end of the instrument and change strings and this?
Yeah, they would take you through all that as well. You would strip a whole down piano and be able to rebuild it all, and that was part of the learning process about how all the waves and all the frequencies would work within the piano and how it would resonate within the soundboard as well.
Hi, Duncan. Thanks very much for coming back on again. And it just occurred that there's a wee bit confusion, not only in the piping world, but in the general world of musicians that deal with pipers, when we refer to A and the bagpipe and how we're tuning drones and all that sort of stuff. And if somebody asks us, say, what key we in, and we blithely maybe remark it's A. And I wondered how that could be when we're starting to use B flat chanters along with orchestras, and I'm not very good at counting at times, but I always thought that B was above A sort of thing, and how this could be when we're blithely selling chanters in A or something like that, and it's actually B flat, and we're selling B flat chanters that's supposed to be lower than what we're using. I find it all rather confusing, and I think that you can maybe fling some light on it. Historically, how did this occur? And then moving on, how was it established to be a wee bit? How did we diverge? But historically, what was the position?
Well, it seems to be that previously, a few many moons ago, that the natural pitch that was getting made was more roughly about B flat. If you look at old woodwind instruments and old brass instruments, they come in the tonic note was about B flat, and probably about the early 1800s, there was like orchestras in Europe they were trying to standardize what the notes would be and what a pitch would be, because everybody was playing in different pitches, it appears.
And that, sorry to interrupt you, but that B flat that you referred to historically, what was a hertz number for that?
So if we look at B flat, what's measured in today, it was defined as 466 hertz, just over 400 hertz.
Yeah.
That was the pitch. And then roughly when the piano and the cast iron frame, round about, I looked up about 1825, it was moving towards the note that we call A nowadays is technically B flat as we know it nowadays. However, we'll come to that. And it kind of evolved around about the 1800s through to the 1900s that A was going to get referenced at 440 hertz.
What happened to the bagpipe when that happened?
So basically, we referenced our A, which is technically now B flat, as A. That's what the notes of the pipes were called. But yeah, we just kept to what we had. The staff notation was written as A, so low G up to high A on the staff notation. But really, what should have happened was if the pipes were to come in line with everybody, we should have moved up a semitone up to B flat, and we should have moved up onto the B flat, the next line on the musical notation, and written it up accordingly. But we didn't. Yeah. We just kept to what we had, which meant there was a disparity between what we had and what other instruments were then referencing. So when we come to the early 1900s, everybody thinks that A is in 440 hertz, but we are still referencing A at 466, which is now recognized as B flat to all other genres of music.
Yeah, carry on.
And technically we just didn't come in line with it. We just kept going as what we had. We write the staff notation, but we call low G up to high A.
Yeah.
Which other musicians, but really should be from A flat up to B flat. If it's going to be grammatically correct now for other musicians to follow, that's what they would be playing in. Whereas we always see it a semitone down.
Yeah.
So it's just the way things have evolved. Before anything was standardized, it was just all rough, and everybody would have been different, and they needed to come together and say, right, this is A's 440 nowadays, and this is what the chromatic scales came after that, basically. Pipers round about the 50s and 60s, the tone was definitely flatter. And as we've went through into the 70s and the 80s, it seems to be the pitch of the pipes has come up. Because basically, as you say, it's not in time until we come in line with playing with other instruments that this becomes evident. Now, there could be a couple of reasons for this. My own thoughts on it is that as the pitch slightly increased, it just became sweeter to the ear, tuning became easier, and we seemed to get a really nice harmonic out of the accompanying drones that came along with it. So
hertz number it moved up to.
So basically,
moved up to where?
So if we're looking at B flat as a reference of 466, we're roughly right until the late 70s, early 80s, the pitch has moved up to roughly anywhere between 476 hertz and 484 hertz, whereas the modern pipe band is today, roughly. So it's roughly between them. And if we look at B as a reference in hertz-wise, B comes in at just over 493 hertz. So we're some way roughly between B flat and B.
Yeah.
And that's if we're referencing concert pitch.
Okay.
So when we go and play with a piano, for example, or an accordion or a guitar, it's quite difficult sometimes to distinguish other musicians. Are we playing in B flat or are we playing in B? Because sometimes it verges a wee bit closer to B or a wee bit closer to B flat, depending on what kind of chanter you're playing, how cold the room is, etc. So in order for other instruments to play with them chanters, for example, modern and pipe band pitch of 484, pipe band can't tune down or up. Well, they can if they put in B flat chanters, but if they're going to tune to their pitch, it means that accompanying instruments would have to tune up to whatever the pitch of the pipe band was.
And if they can't do that, and everybody's keen to play together, the pipe band has got to substitute their pipe chanters currently tuning in the 480 or whatever, and try to come down to at least 466, and with the use of a B flat chanter.
That's right, yes.
Yeah, and I think you've covered this already, but I'd just like to cover ever so briefly again where you're talking about the two main temperaments in music.
Okay. So we tune in what we call just temperament. So I looked up a reference to just temperament, and basically it's saying that they maintain the exact inter-ratios between pitches. So in pipe, in just temperament, a fourth and a fifth would be smooth. We would have them as perfect intervals, a perfect fifth, a perfect fourth. And I don't know the best way to describe this. So on the piano, a C sharp and a D flat is the same note, and that's an equal temperament. But in just temperament, they would be slightly different. A C sharp would just be slightly flatter than a D flat. And the reason for doing that was so they didn't have to tune all the other instruments to play in all different keys. You could only play in about 3 or 4 keys in just temperament, and then they would have to tune it to another one. And in piping, that's just what we naturally do that. So when we come to play with other instruments in equal temperament, for example, there's 2 main notes that we need to look out for in the bagpipe. And if you get your B flat chanter and you set it up accordingly, and our A in piping, which is B flat, is bang on 466, and we have the scale chromatically, which we think is tuned to our ear, is right. The 2 main notes would be highlighted in that because of the key of B flat would be low G, high G, and D. Now, what you'd have to, because we tune them to the drones, and the drones is a constant, but in equal temperament, it's been tempered with a wee bit. So a fourth and a fifth and a sixth are all beating intervals. So in order to make it more in tune with equal temperament, we would have to, well, it's not in tune with our ear, but we'd have to sharpen, especially the low G, in line with the A flat, and then with other instruments, the high G and the D would have to be slightly brighter as well, just in order to play with the other instruments in tune, because they're playing in a different temperament to what we're used to tuning to the drones.
And that, of course, because our ears have been trained over a few decades, would sound a wee bit wildly out to us if we played that even on our own. And I say, well, there's something wrong here, because my ears not just tuned into that sound that we're putting out here, this altered sound. So, but a lot happier with the intervals that we've got in our chanter, and we're a wee bit unhappy if we start alternate to play with other people, but unfortunately, if you're going to be perfect, then this is what you maybe need to consider. But I get the impression we don't really bother doing that. Is that correct or otherwise? Say, for instance, the London Philharmonic, and you're playing a paper, for instance, with long notes, and it's got low G, D, and the high G. Is this really going to cause you problems, or is it just something you can gloss over?
No, you would definitely hear it in the low G with the orchestra. It would sound slightly flat. And the biggest time you hear it is when you go into the recording studio.
Aye, okay.
And that's when everything gets highlighted, because everything's in tune and it gets highlighted and stuff. So low G, definitely.
Aye, so with the sound like one of our notes well there. Aye.
High G, you would get away with it a little bit more because we're up an octave and it's less critical in our ear. I don't want to say this, but technically we're right. Because in modern music nowadays, with equal temperament, if you're talking about frequencies, chromatic scales, what we hear nowadays is just ever so slightly out of tune. But we're so used to hearing it, it's become the norm to us.
Well, at that point, we've almost lost the audience.
We're looking mainly at the pentatonic scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mainly pentatonic scale, which would be 5 notes. That's your pentatonic scale there. Easiest way to find the pentatonic, or to think about the pentatonic scale, it's the black notes on the piano.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, you know, when you're doing, when these folk are, you know, playing. That's the pentatonic scale. Those 5 notes on the piano, they're the black notes on the piano.
Okay.
In every key you can pick out a pentatonic scale. Pentatonic scale in C major. I'm just making something up.
Yeah.
And it works quite nicely on the pipes.
Yes.
And it works nicely on the violin as well. Violin, string music, they like the pentatonic scale too, and that's where a lot of Scottish music is based on the pentatonic scale.
Aye.
Yeah, that's me. I'm in A major as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, I'm in A major.
Okay.
However, you've got 2 sharps at the beginning, which is D major. So home would be there. But the music's saying it's in that key there. When you were playing your pipes earlier on, you were playing that tune, but you were somewhere around B flat. Yep, you were around that key. It was kind of in between B and B flat. But then you put a new chanter, you put a different chanter in, you say this is my lower chanter. And that lower chanter took it closer to the A. So you were almost between the A and the A and the B flat. You told me that a lot of, originally, the music had 2 sharps in it, which would normally be the key of D major or B minor. Those would be the 2 key that key signature would relate to those 2 scales in the kind of classical music world, if you like. However, when I look at the music's actually written out in what I would term as a classical musician, a trained classical musician, I would term to be A minor. So what I was trying to kind of demonstrate a wee bit there is how difficult it is to actually play along with you.
Yes.
Because number one, the tuning is so difficult, so tricky.
Yeah.
It's really difficult for you to get in tune to concert.
So the small pipes, that's supposed to be an A.
Probably if we were to spend a bit of time and actually tune it together, then I would imagine we could get
They're advertised as
you're in
A,
A there.
yeah.
Yeah, it sounds to me as if you were in A. Is that correct?
Yeah.
A million miles apart there. So we're closer that time. But to my mind, you're in A there, quite obviously.
When you talk about the bagpipe scale, there was nothing really in previous books that described really what the bagpipe scale was like in relation to other instruments. And the interesting thing is that a long time ago, the music for the bagpipe was written the way it is today. But it would have 2 sharps at the start of the music, indicating a key signature. And bands and orchestras who've wanted to get a piper to play along with their orchestra for some particular piece of music would actually use that sort of key signature and discover that the pipes didn't fit it.
And what was the key that was posed by the 2 sharps?
That would be, it would be the key of D major. Well, so many pieces of music that we play are pentatonic. And I think pentatonic music probably came along because it's, from the point of view of singing, or perhaps playing a simple instrument, that kind of thing was easier than the more complex major and minor scales. And swapping the scales around. See if you know this tune. I wonder if you ever went back to Oban.
How many scales can you play in the fiddle?
Yeah, well, basically, it's kind of endless because you have G major, and then A, B flat, C, D, so, you know, and then E, and then there's all the minors as well. I haven't added them up. I'll not sleep the night now. I'll have to work that out, how many, and there's chromatic as well. Etc. Yeah, and they all have arpeggios as well.
Press with one string in your fingers.
You're just doing the note in between, you know, so like a B flat, B, C, C sharp, D, E flat, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A.
We discussed with Duncan this morning the difficulty in tuning instruments.
Ah, well, that's the next part of the discussion. If you like.
I don't think it's hard.
It's not hard. No, you just have to know what you're trying to do, and that comes down to the knowledge thing again. You know, there has to be an appreciation that whereas, and actually I was having this discussion not that long ago with Stuart McCallum, and I'm going to see him this afternoon, and we'll be continuing that discussion. Whereas pitch, the absolute pitch of the Highland bagpipe, as far as a solo player or a pipe band is concerned, is not that important. Everybody knows that the pitch will rise a little bit as you're playing, it will come down a few bit, and that variation in pitch is accepted and acceptable as long as in a pipe band it's happening the same way everybody. But you know, any solo player that was in the Glenfiddich knows that when he takes his bagpipe in the tuning room, the pitch will rise, and if it's warm in the competition room, the pitch will come up a wee bit, and it's fine, it doesn't matter. As soon as you start playing with other instruments, that whole world changes, that scene changes right away. Pitch is crucial, and it can't move, it has to stay the same. So you have to learn, and this is something I've been thinking about a wee bit over the past wee while, that we talk about the solo and pipe band pipers being great with their instrument, you know, they control their instrument, they could work their instrument really well. Anybody who's playing with other musicians has to be, even in my opinion, even better at that, because not only do they have to understand what the right pitch is in the first place, find that right pitch, and then keep the instrument at that pitch for the entire duration of the performance or recording session or whatever it is. Because you can't, if you're playing with an orchestra, be a little out of tune in the first 5 minutes and say to the conductor, don't worry, it'll come up. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
It has to be at the pitch at the start, and it has to be a pitch at the end, and that's a skill. All the things you've mentioned, they're absolutely vital. The perhaps the most important one, and you haven't mentioned it, but I know you do it because I've seen you do it, is the amount of playing time. You have to know your instrument, and this takes, you're absolutely right about that amount of time, because it takes every bit as much time and possibly more keeping an instrument going at a particular pitch than it does keeping an instrument going where you don't mind the pitch wandering. Yeah. So that the ability to set the thing up and find your systems and your right gear and all the rest of it is right. But also, when I was in the battlefield band, it knew exactly that. I would play them for 10 minutes, leave them for 5, pick them up, play them for 5, leave them down. They'd be at the start of the gig, they'd be in pitch. And then we programmed the gig so that there was enough space between each pipe set so that the instrument wouldn't drift. Yeah. If we put 4 pipe sets in a row, then that instrument's going to come up, because we know that's what happens, right? Yeah. So you play them, leave them, play them, leave them, and you become expert at that. Yeah. It's a real skill.
Who then have to do that for whatever gig they're doing, and quite a lot of the time it's done last minute. I better get these B flat pipes going, and then people wonder why they don't sound good. You know, it's like if I was doing the opposite. I've not played anything sharper than B flat for about 10 years, because I made the conscious decision that I'm only going to play in this pitch because I want to dedicate any time I'm playing. I want that to be dedicated to getting that pitch sounding as good as I can. Not going 10 minutes before the gig, here, I better try and get these pipes down and pitch a bit, or try this chanter. So I spend all my time playing in B flat, and to me that's just the norm now. You know, and I found that a system that, you know, the right chanter and reed, the right drones, reeds, bag, that means if I'm going to do a gig, I know that I can take my pipes out, and within, and I'm not gloating or anything, it's just the fact is I've found a system that within 2 minutes I'm on concert pitch, and it stays pretty stable.
And you keep it.
Hey, Finlay, you don't play several sets of pipes, and you just stick to the one?
Just the one, yeah.
Well, I run 3 sets of Highland pipes. I have 3 sets of Highland pipes on the go continually all the time, one of them with 2 chanters. I keep a set in what we might call modern pitch, and I've got a McCallum chanter, MC squared chanter for that, and a nail that I use for outdoor playing because it's a bit brighter. Then I've got a set, I keep it B flat, and I've got a set of pipes, and this is what I'm going to see McCallum's about this afternoon, that I keep in concert A all the time. And I can reach any of those instruments at any time and play and do the bit.
I think it depends on the individual and the situation that they're in musically. If it's just for me and I'm playing in the house and I'm going to the pub for a few tunes, I only need to know what I need to know. If I want to take that further and go and sit in on an album and play, you know, parts or whatever, I need to be able to do that. So to be able to do that, I need to be able to read music. It's teamwork, isn't it? Like, I've played in so many bands and I have to adapt my playing to whoever's leading that band. You know, if it's Ian Smith from Tyree, who plays completely differently from, say, Alistair McCush or whoever it is, you know, if you're a listener, to me, listening is like top of the list. If you listen, you know, it is possible. But if I wanted to be big and bold in that band and do my own thing, it wouldn't be as good a night, because there would be this, you're fighting all the time. So it's about, you know, I suppose showing respect to that band and trying to fit into that sound. But if it was just me, I wouldn't have all that to think about. So be playing differently. It's about, I think if musicians can adapt, it's very helpful.
Accordions, does that work?
Yes, it works perfectly well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I play with an accordion player in a fling band all the time. When we're playing the dance sets, Canadian band matches, all that kind of stuff. You have to. And again, this is another thing we could talk about. What pipers have to know a little bit is about adapting the style of their playing. You can't play the two formats the same on the competition platform as you can for the dance floor.
That's right.
So again, there's a wee bit of come and go involved in that. But you can make anything work if you have, first of all, the willingness as a piper. You mentioned earlier on, Alan, yourself about that lack of interest. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to be interested in other music. But if you are, then you need to be willing to talk to the other musicians and have some dialogue. And crucially,
And this is where theory helps.
Right. It does help, but more important is interest and willingness to engage.
Yes, aye.
And the last piece of that jigsaw, when you're asking about who do you like playing with, what you need to find there, as Finlay says, is people, the right person, who is also interested in having that dialogue. Because you can, I've had some experiences where somebody's thought it would be a good idea to bring in some pipes. Oh, great, let's bring pipes in. But the other musicians on the project have been not that enthusiastic about pipes coming in, so you don't get that dialogue, and the experience is a difficult one, you know.
Yes.
Whatever instrument or type of music or anything as you're talking about it, the important thing is that the piper and the other musicians are willing to engage in some kind of dialogue.
Fully covered. Well, I'll tell you one thing I would like to say maybe in conclusion is that, and I think Finlay you'd agree with me, we don't want to scare pipers off here,
No.
you know. It's not the case that in order to go and play with an orchestra or a folk band or a ceilidh band or a jazz band or whatever it is, that you need a degree in music. What you need to know is enough. You need to know enough for that particular job. So whatever job it is you're asked to do, if you're interested in doing it, ask the right questions and get yourself enough information to be able to carry you through that job. Because once you've got enough information to play with a ceilidh band, and then you've got enough information to play with a folk band, and then you've got enough you're amassing information all the time.
No.
And some of that can be done formally, some of it can be done informally, but it's all grist to the mill.
Again, same as what Dougie's saying. I don't think there has to be a huge distinction between, or if you don't have that knowledge, it doesn't make you a worse musician. You know, so solo pipers that focus on solo competition piping
Are great musicians.
are incredible musicians. If they want to then go and play with an orchestra, there's a couple of things they'll probably just have to learn and they can smash it easily. It shouldn't be something that's feared.
No,
I think that's what I'm trying to say. It's just
It's
it's-
everything else in life, it's not the answers, it's the correct question.
asking the right questions.
right, exactly. Yeah.
And it will lead you to some of the most rewarding and enriching musical experiences you can get.
Yeah, and be open. Try it. Give it a go.